Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. U.S. President Joe Biden is meeting with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in Ottawa, discussing a whole host of issues, including the war in Ukraine. Alberta Finance Minister Travis Toews announced today that he will not be seeking re-election on May 29th. And the Aurora Borealis was on full display across much of southwestern Alberta last night. BCN's Micah Quinn finds out how the Northern Lights are actually formed.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. U.S. President Joe Biden arrived in Ottawa today for several high-level meetings with government officials. Biden and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau say they will discuss a wide range of issues impacting our countries, including the sharing of natural resources, immigration, and the war in Ukraine. And later this evening, Biden and his wife will be honored at a special gala dinner. Other guests who will also be in attendance include Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig, the two Canadians who were imprisoned in China for nearly 3 years. U.S. President Joe Biden says it's been quite a while since he last visited Canada.
It's been too long between meetings. It's been, I think, 2016 I was here. And, the one great thing, and I tell other world leaders I meet with when they ask about the geopolitical circumstances of the world, I said, we're lucky. We have Canada to our north, share these values. All the values are the same. We disagree in degree on things occasionally, but there's no fundamental difference in the democratic values we share. And it really makes a big difference. And so it's an honor to be here. We have a lot to talk about, and I think we're gonna get a lot done today.
And we just received word that Canada signed a border deal with the United States that would allow our country to turn back migrants from the U.S. who were looking to make asylum claims at points of entry, such as Roxham Road. Well, we now know it was Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his wife Sophie who stayed at the $6,000 per night Corinthia Hotel in London during the Queen's funeral. And according to the Toronto Sun, the couple stayed for a total of 5 nights, costing taxpayers $30,000. Now, to chat about this in more detail is the federal director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, Franco Terrazzano, joins us once again from Ottawa. Franco, you're demanding that the Prime Minister pay the money back, but will he?
Well, we sure are demanding that Trudeau pay that money back, because here's the thing. There is no way that struggling Canadians who are worried about the price of milk, the price of groceries, who are struggling to fill the fridge, there's no way Canadians should be paying for the Prime Minister to stay in a $6,000 per night hotel room. That's completely unacceptable. So yeah, we are demanding that Trudeau pay the money back.
Let me ask you something. Were you a little surprised that the PMO admitted that it was Justin Trudeau and his wife Sophie who stayed at the hotel?
Well, I think everyone in Canada knew that it was, in fact, Trudeau who stayed in the $6,000 per night hotel room. Now, here's why Trudeau finally fessed up. He knew that the court was going to force him to come clean with Canadians and say who it was who stayed in that room, because the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, we launched a legal challenge to force the government to come clean with Canadians and finally admit who it was who stayed in the $6,000 per night hotel room. But here's the thing we have to remember, folks. Trudeau is trying to bury the story. That's why he finally admitted that it was him the same evening that Biden was coming to Canada.
Did the Prime Minister's office explain why Trudeau stayed at this very posh hotel instead of something a little more affordable, such as like $1,000 a night?
Well, there is no legitimate rationale. There is no legitimate rationale. There is no reason that the Prime Minister should be billing Canadians for a $6,000 per night luxury hotel suite, especially when so many people are struggling. Look, it's so expensive, the hotel he was staying at, that the government could have saved money by staying at the Shangri-La. Okay, if you know that you could save money staying at the Shangri-La or the Four Seasons or the Savoy, then you know that the government truly spared no expense.
Thanks so much for your time today, Franco. That was Franco Terrazzano, Federal Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, joining us from Ottawa. Alberta Finance Minister Travis Toews says he will not be seeking re-election in May. The Grand Prairie UCP MLA says he wants to spend more time with his family and on his ranch. Toews was one of the main candidates who ran for the party leadership last fall that was won by Daniel Smith. Party officials say a new candidate will be appointed soon for the constituency of Grand Prairie-Wapiti for the May 29th provincial election. Now, in a statement, Premier Daniel Smith said Minister Travis Toews has been one of the strongest finance ministers in Alberta's history and leaves a legacy of strong fiscal management that I will continue to uphold as Premier. And this just in. Alberta Minister of Environment and Protected Areas Sonia Savage also announced that she will not be seeking re-election this spring. Like Toews, the Calgary Northwest MLA says she wants to spend more time with her family. The province announced more funding to support youth and trades careers in Alberta. Skilled Trades and Professions Minister Casey Medu says the government will invest $30.4 million over the next 3 years to support our next generation.
This funding will support organizations' proven and complementary programs and help students still in high school to discover the rewards of careers in the skilled trades and technology. Opportunity is a word you hear a lot in Alberta these days. We are leading the country in economic growth, and we are focused on even more job creation and diversification as we continue to be the indisputable economic engine of our country.
Now, the province also announced that another $30 million will go into strengthening Alberta's artificial intelligence sector while growing the technology and innovation talent pool. Minister of Technology and Innovation Nate Glubish says this investment into the Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute will attract investment and create jobs in one of our province's fastest growing sectors.
This is a great example of innovation at work in Alberta, and it is proof that our province is a place where tech companies and creative thinkers can succeed. And there's a number of reasons why Alberta is increasingly being regarded as an outstanding hub for technology and innovation, and specifically for artificial intelligence. We know that the University of Alberta was the first in Canada to create a standalone computing science department, and it is ranked as one of the top AI research centers in the world. That is an amazing story that we need to continue to tell.
It appears as though traditional conservatism is lost in North American society. Now, that's according to Dr. Yoram Hazony, president of the Herzl Research Institute in Jerusalem. Dr. Hazony also wrote a book on the subject called Conservatism, a Rediscovery. Dr. Hazony was recently interviewed on Return to Reason with host David Craig. He says it's sad that in so many societies today, conservatism appears to be lost.
Conservatives begin with the assumption that there is a people, a nation, a religion, a tradition that needs to be preserved, repaired, and strengthened and upheld. And that's the heart of conservatism. And because we have lost that heart of conservatism in so many, conservative political parties and newspapers and youth movements, I kind of wanted to set the record straight, and that's what the book is for.
Make sure you catch the entire interview with Dr. Hazony and Return to Reason's David Craig on the RTR website or YouTube channel. Well, we had sun mixed with clouds earlier today, and not too bad as we were above zero once again, above the freezing mark. Jeanette Roche is now with an early peek at the forecast. Jeanette, last night we had the spectacular northern lights, and tonight we could see some flurries?
Yeah, true. And I'm so sad that I missed those northern lights last night, Hal. Hopefully you caught them. But yes, flurries this evening, at least a slight chance of them. We're looking at a 30% chance overnight with an overnight low of -6 with a 20 kilometer per hour wind. So going to feel like -10 with that wind chill. As we get into Saturday morning, those skies are going to clear up early in the morning. We're looking at a daytime high of 6 degrees. So should be a pretty nice start to the weekend. And speaking of the weekend, I'll be back later in the show to give you that full weekend and 7-day forecast.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. If you had a chance to take a quick look outside in Lethbridge, you had a chance to see the beautiful northern lights last night. They're also called Aurora Borealis. The lights are constantly changing shape and color, and the easiest way to see them is in the dark, far away from the city streetlights. As BCN's Micah Quinn explains now, staff from the Lethbridge Astronomy Society talked with us about how the amazing lights really shine up the night sky.
The most common color is sort of a whitish green. Occasionally you're going to see red, occasionally you're going to see purple.
Tom Anderson, the president of the Lethbridge Astronomy Society, explained to us how the northern lights are formed.
And what happens there is this huge plume of energy fires off the surface of the sun. And you've probably seen photographs of these big solar flares on the side of the sun. If one of them happens to be sort of aimed at the Earth, what happens is a stream of charged particles flies off the surface of the sun and heads on towards Earth. It falls into our magnetic field. And as these charged particles hit molecules in the atmosphere, they light up, and it's called ionization, which is very similar to the process that goes on in neon tubes, if you've seen those.
The northern lights were particularly bright on Thursday night, right here in Lethbridge. Anderson says the color of the lights depends on what molecules they're hitting at the time.
Whether it's oxygen or nitrogen or what have you up in the atmosphere. It also depends a bit on the elevation, depends a bit on the amount of energy that's actually in those ions that are streaming off from the sun. The other thing I should mention is that the northern lights are actually occurring in high levels of the atmosphere. So we're talking hundreds of kilometers up. They don't actually hit the ground, even though they may appear to do so.
According to Anderson, there will be plenty of chances to view the northern lights coming up. You can look for updates on when the next display will be by visiting aurorawatch.ca. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
A bail hearing for the mother accused in the case of the assault of her infant daughter has been delayed once again. The mother, who cannot be named under a publication ban to protect the victim's identity, did not make an appearance earlier today. Her defense counsel, John Oman, told the court that further discussions with prosecution about her release need to happen before moving forward. The mother has been charged with failing to provide the necessaries of life. She will remain in custody until her next court date, which is on April the 14th. Lethbridge police say they have seized nearly $150,000 worth of drugs and have charged a 19-year-old Edmonton man with drug trafficking offences. Staff from LPS say they arrested the man following an execution of a search warrant at a Northside residence on Thursday. Police grabbed 625 grams of fentanyl, 400 grams of cocaine, narcotic medications, and more than $3,100 in cash, along with a vehicle. Deandra Mabor Syed is charged with 2 counts of possession of a controlled substance for the purpose of trafficking and possession of the proceeds of crime. He is currently in custody, awaiting a bail hearing. Edmonton police say the 16-year-old boy who shot and killed 2 police officers a week ago had been apprehended in November under the Mental Health Act and was taken to hospital for assessment. The youth also shot his mother and took his own life.
Yesterday, the medical examiner conducted an autopsy and confirmed that the 16-year-old male shooter's death was a single gunshot wound to the head, consistent with being self-inflicted. There were no other shots fired by anyone else during this event. A bullet casing recovered from the scene of a March 12, 2023 shooting at a nearby restaurant have also been forensically matched to the firearm that was recovered at the apartment, where Constable Brett Ryan and Constable Travis Jordan were fatally shot. The same gun was used for both events, and at this time we don't have information that links the firearm to any other crimes.
Police had responded to that address for a mental health type complaint. That was back in November of last year. And information from that call, we were unable to provide a lot last time, but we can now share that this youth was apprehended under the Mental Health Act by our officers, and that was after consultation with our PACT, or our police and crisis teams. The youth was then transported to the hospital for assessment.
According to a new report by Stats Canada, the number of hate crimes reported in our country in 2021 came in at 3,360. Now, here in Alberta, the number reached 339, and fortunately, there were only 10 reported in Lethbridge back in 2021. Staff from the organization said awareness among members of the community and police and that relationship plays a huge role in how or if a crime is reported. A mobile mammography unit will be in the town of Milk River at the beginning of April for women who are looking to get tested for breast cancer. AHS says women between the ages of 45 and 75 are most at risk, so it's vital to get checked. Officials with the AHS say the appointment takes around 30 minutes to complete and the results are released within 2 to 3 weeks. They say detecting breast cancer early can help save lives.
Having routine mammograms have been proven to be the most effective way to find breast cancer early, when the tumors are still small and before symptoms develop. At this stage, there are more treatment options. The individual has higher chances of survival and better health outcomes.
To book an appointment, you're being asked to call 1-800-667-0604. The mobile mammography trailer will be in Milk River on April 3rd and 4th. You know, there's been a lot of advertising on social media recently about fasting. The ads say it's a good way to lose weight while helping to lead a healthier lifestyle. Nutritionist Josie Bosgra with Roots and Fruits Wellness here in Lethbridge says fasting is good for some people, but not for others. She says it really works better for middle-aged men.
Good for some people, particularly middle-aged men, I would say might thrive more with the intermittent fasting type thing that's going on. Women, it's not really something I would be a big fan of, just because the man has a hormone cycle of 24 hours, right? It's the same every day. It fluctuates throughout the day a little bit, but then it's the same. So they can kind of handle that. But for a woman, your hormones are different every single day of the month. And so if you fast, whether it's like a full day fast once a month or the intermittent fasting, that can affect your hormones greatly by messing with your cortisol levels. And I don't think it's super wise.
Nutritionist Josie Bosgra will also chat with us about proper cleansing techniques for our bodies. She'll have details coming up after business news. A University of Lethbridge musical group is pretty jazzed to make renditions of classic video games tonight at 7:30 at the U of L Theatre. Josh Davies, the instructor of trumpet and jazz ensemble for the university, outlined the old school video games like Mario and Zelda that will be showcased. Some TV shows and science fiction movies will also be heard.
We're actually doing 4 movements of Star Wars right after that. We're doing the main theme, the Binary Sunset, really beautiful piece from episode 4. What is the third one? The third one is Imperial March, of course, Vader's moment, and finishing up with Cantina, the fun Cantina song.
And money raised will go toward the U of L Jazz Ensemble to help students in the program. Now, students at St. Francis Junior High School have been working pretty hard preparing for their upcoming production of the High School Musical. The school's production will be exactly like the Disney Channel movie, with the students playing all of the characters. Director and teacher at the school, Dino Caputo, credits the staff for allowing them to use the gym and transform it into a theatrical extravaganza.
You know, what gym gives up their space for 12 days, but we collaborate and we work together, we come up with a plan. No one misses gym class. Unfortunately, we just don't have the gym for a little while where we get to use it as a theater space. Yeah. And one thing that, again, I say all the time is, you're not coming to see a junior high show. You're coming to see a professional show put on by junior high kids.
Emily Lane, who'll be playing the role of Gabriella, says this will be the first production she's ever been a part of, and she's pretty excited for everyone to see it.
I've never been in a play before, and when I auditioned, I was really surprised when I got Gabriella, but it's been really fun because it's helped me get out of my comfort zone a little bit. I think I'm most excited to be on the stage because I've never been on a stage like this before, and it's a really impressive set. And with all the lights and the microphones, I think it'll feel really real.
Now, tickets for the production can be purchased directly through the school. Well, it was another beautiful day across much of southwestern Alberta today, and not a bad weekend is shaping up either. A full look at the weather picture is on deck. So glad that spring has arrived, as we've seen consistent temperatures above the freezing mark over the past few days here in Lethbridge. Jeanette Rocher is now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, not a bad weekend is shaping up either, but tonight, however, there's a slight chance that we could see more of that white stuff.
Yeah, but not only that, Hal, we could see those temperatures start to dip down into the minuses as we get early into next week. As we're sitting for tomorrow, Saturday, we're looking at a sunshiny day with a high of 6 degrees, so should be pretty lovely. Mainly cloudy skies, though, on Sunday, high of 0, -5. That's where we start getting into those minuses again. A little chilly start to next week. Mainly cloudy skies on Monday, -5 for a high, -1 the high on Tuesday, then back up to 0 on Wednesday, and then we're back into the pluses by Thursday. So we're going to have that little dip in temperature there early in the week. Average high for this time of year, 8 degrees. Average low, -5, 21. That was our high temperature on this day back in 1999. And back in 1955, it was a chilly -26. 7:26, that's when the sun rose this morning. Our sun set this evening at 7:49. So we are now at 12 hours and 23 minutes of daylight. We're almost at 12 and a half hours. Pretty great. Okay, lots of precipitation on the west coast, looking at 60% chance of showers in Victoria, 9 degrees the high there, 8 the high in Vancouver, also looking at showers and some wet flurries in the higher terrain. As we look to Alberta, 5 degrees the high in Edmonton and Calgary, both of those cities looking at 30% a chance of showers or flurries. To the rest of the prairies, we're looking at Saskatoon, high of -6, 30% chance of flurries, -5 in Regina, 30% chance of flurries as well. And same thing for Winnipeg with those flurries and a high of -3. Keep in mind those wind chill values. Going to still feel more like in the -20s in the morning there in the prairies. Toronto, heavy rains tomorrow. We're looking at 10 to 20 millimeters of rain, 9 degrees the high. Heavy snow beginning in the afternoon in Ottawa, up to 5 centimeters, 0 the high there. 1 degree the high in Montreal tomorrow, and snow beginning in the afternoon there as well. As we move on over to Fredericton, looking at a high of 6 degrees tomorrow with mainly sunny skies, increasing clouds by the afternoon. Halifax seeing also a high of 6 degrees with partly cloudy skies. High of 4 degrees in Charlottetown tomorrow. And St. John's, we are looking at a winter storm warning in effect. We could see 20, 30 centimeters of snow this evening and up to 100 kilometer per hour winds along parts of the coast. By tomorrow, Saturday, 90 kilometer winds and still some heavy snow there, up to 10 centimeters with a high of 1. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
Today's weather report is brought to you by Ridge Utilities, providing competitive rates for electricity, natural gas, and internet, while investing back in communities across southern Alberta.
Stats Canada says retail sales increased for the 4th straight month in January. The agency says it's a sign of consumer strength, even as inflation continued to push prices higher. It says retail sales were up 1.4% to $66.4 billion. That is nearly triple the 0.5% gain in December and higher than the 0.7% increase it had estimated. Core sales, which exclude gas stations and motor vehicle sales and motor vehicle parts, rose 0.5% for the month. Stats Canada says initial estimate suggests a sales decline of 0.6% in February. Canadians are about to see the biggest increase in more than 40 years to the country's alcohol excise tax. The federal beverage alcohol duty is set to jump 6.3% on April 1st. Industry experts say prices will be going up by quite a bit as the higher tax makes its way through the supply chain. Hospitality industry advocates say the higher duty could force some bars and restaurants to close as they're dealing with record high inflation along with rising labor and food costs. Shares in Deutsche Bank fell and dragged down major European banks as fears about the global financial system sent shudders through the markets. Shares in Germany's largest lender were down 14% in Frankfurt. This is even though it had plenty of capital reserves along with 5 straight quarters of profits. The drop follows a steep rise in the cost of financial derivatives, which insure bondholders against the bank defaulting on its debts. Rising costs on insuring debt were also prelude to a government-backed takeover of Swiss lender Credit Suisse by its rival UBS. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 41 points on the day to finish at 19,501. The Dow was up 132 points to 32,237. The S&P 500 was up 22 on the day to 3970. And the Nasdaq was up 36 points to 11,823. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 70 cents to $69.26 U.S. per barrel. Natural gas was up 6 cents to $2.22 U.S. Gold was down $15.19 to $19.7821 U.S. an ounce, and silver was up 12 cents to $23.23 U.S. an ounce. Feed wheat is at $11.26 per bushel. Barley's at $8.92. Canola's at $17, and corn is at $10.62 per bushel. Live cattle April contract was up 85 cents to $163. Feeder cattle March contract was up 63 cents to $189.65. And lean hogs April contract was up $1.43 to $77.18. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to $72.76 U.S. Recapping one of our top stories, 2 high-profile UCP ministers announced that they will not be seeking re-election. Finance Minister Travis Taves, who's the UCP MLA for Grand Prairie Wapiti, will be stepping aside, as will the Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, Sonia Savage. Both say they want to spend more time with their families. The Alberta election is coming up on May the 29th. Fasting may not be the best way of getting healthier, and it's apparently not for everyone. That's according to local nutritionist Josie Bosgra with Roots and Fruits Wellness. We'll have more details for us shortly. Listen, if you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you. Healthy living is a quest for so many of us. So where do we go for advice? And how do we move through the distraction and clutter toward a more healthier lifestyle? Joining us today to chat about it is Josie Bosgra of Roots and Fruits Wellness. Josie has some tips on how to lead a healthier lifestyle. Now, some of you may remember Josie. She used to be a video journalist right here on Bridge City News. She was an interviewer when she covered a lot of the stories for us, but this morning she's the interviewee. Josie, welcome back to BCN.
Thanks so much. It's so special to be here.
Yeah. Josie, foundations for a new house are very important as the foundation for a healthy lifestyle. Let's talk about how food really impacts that foundation in our bodies.
Yeah, I mean, our cells are made up of essentially food that's broken down, right? So when we get down to the cellular level and we're looking at what our cells need in order to carry out their function, it all comes from food. And so they really are the building blocks to life. It's how we get energy. It's how we grow. So if we don't have food and the right food, whole foods, real foods, not packaged, processed, boxed foods, then it's going to affect every area of your life, from growth to energy to mental health and so much more.
Let's talk about how food actually impacts somebody's mood. What foods would you recommend to give somebody maybe a healthier, happier mood as opposed to the foods that maybe will bring you down a little bit mentally?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there are some general foods that, I could suggest, but it's important to remember that everyone is different, like biochemically, we're all different. And so I can't think of any like specific studies off the top of my head, but I know for a fact that 90% or more of the body's serotonin, which is like your happy neurotransmitter that affects your mood, for the better, is made in your intestinal bacteria, made by your intestinal bacteria. And so if your balance of bacteria in your gut is off, and different foods can affect that, but also eating the wrong foods for you could affect that, right? If you have intolerances and you hear a lot of people who are like, I'm lactose intolerant, but I'm eating ice cream anyway, and then they complain about it. So I think the number one thing would be to avoid foods that you know that you're sensitive to, so that your body isn't having that immune response and then in turn affecting your serotonin levels. Fermented foods are great because they're really healing to the gut. And then if we can restore that bacterial balance, we can restore that amount of serotonin, and that's going to make us happy. So that's kind of the gist of what I would say.
Is it really important to be tested for food sensitivities versus perhaps food allergies?
I do think it's important, especially when you have things going on, and food intolerances or sensitivities don't always manifest in like a very overtly gastrointestinal way. So for lots of people, it's bloating, it's diarrhea, whatever. But for lots of people, they might not draw the link between, oh, my hair's thinning, oh, I have arthritis, oh, I'm having this eczema or skin issues, chronic pain, chronic fatigue. Those can all be manifestations of food sensitivities too. So I think if you're having anything like that in your life, it is really important to get it checked out. And it might not be a forever thing. Lots of people can heal from the inside out and then be able to reintroduce foods, but others will choose not to because they just feel so energized and joyful afterwards, So I do think it's important for sure if you have something going on.
Josie, I want to talk to you about comfort food. Our team was just knocked out of the playoffs. I need some serious comfort food. I want that big tub, that big pail of ice cream right in front of me right now. You say that may not be the healthiest life choice. How about some healthier life choices when it comes to comfort food?
Yeah, I love treats. And I think the important thing with holistic nutrition is that we have to also enjoy life, and we kind of weigh those things and hold it all in tension. And so I think treats are okay, but what I try and teach clients is choosing better treats. Like there are lots of amazing lower sugar ice creams or dairy-free ice creams out there that you will enjoy. And you might not even miss the dairy. And so if you want that treat, choosing something like that, if you know you're sensitive to dairy or you're trying to watch the sugar, that would be a better option. That's still going to give you that comfort without hopefully the negative side effects. So all for treats, all for comfort food, just kind of doing it with better ingredients, essentially. You can make really yummy cakes and cookies with almond flour and stevia sweetened chocolate and different things like that.
Some of my bodybuilding friends, they talk about cheat meals. You know, they'll have a little bit of pizza, maybe a burger every now and then. Is it okay to have that cheat meal? Maybe if it's not processed foods, what do you think?
I struggle with the language. That's all. I struggle with the mindset towards cheating because when it comes to like eating well and maybe staying away from certain things, why are you doing it? Like, are you just depriving yourself and having this mentality of like, I can't eat that, I'm not going to eat that, and it's all negative versus like, I'm choosing to invest in my health and I look at all these awesome foods I get to enjoy. Then when you have that second mindset, having a treat or, you know, something that deviates a little bit from your ideals, you don't have to call it a cheat meal because our mindset is so important. It even affects our digestion, right? So if you're eating the healthiest meal ever, but you're stressed out or in a funk, then that's going to affect your digestion versus if you're eating one of those cheat meals or something that deviates a little bit from your norm and you're doing it with gratitude and gratefulness, then it's probably not going to affect your body the same way.
Is home cooking still the best way to go? Not only as a couple, you can have some fun cooking the food, but you know exactly the ingredients that are going into what you're preparing as opposed to when you go out to a restaurant, there might be super high sodium content and you don't know what else is going into it to make it so tasty.
Yeah, it's the best way to know what's going in your body for sure. Because even if you go to a restaurant and you order something healthy, you might not know what's in the sauce or what's in the marinade for the meat or, you know, where the vegetables came from. Did they get washed properly? All these things. So home cooking is definitely something to strive for like 90% of the time. Everyone, you know, enjoys eating out once in a while, but I think home cooking is important not only for the nutritional value, but again, with the digestion. Your digestion actually starts by enzymes being secreted in your body when you're cooking. So if you're not cooking, you're going through the drive-through, you skip that first step of digestion. And that's really important in order to break down your food to have adequate enzymes. So that's another reason to cook at home.
Now, I understand that you do a blood analysis. Josie, can you talk about what this does and why it's so important?
For sure. So blood analysis is one way that we look at the body and assess kind of the state of your immune system, of your digestion, of your internal organs and stuff. It's not diagnostic. I can't, you know, say anything conclusive about you have this disease or anything like that. But what we do is we just look at the health of your red blood cells, the way your white blood cells are interacting with, you know, pathogens in the body. And there's lots of things we can see in the blood: undigested food, heavy metal toxicity, chemical buildup. And so essentially it's just a tool that I use in my appointments with clients to see where they're at and know where to go in terms of how to personalize what they need with their nutrition and supplements.
You know, I remember when my kids were younger, we took them to the zoo all the time and we went to see the chimpanzees at the zoo. And I was going to feed them a banana. And then the staff said, no, they're on a diet right now. No bananas whatsoever. I'm like, how can you not have monkeys and no bananas, right? So are there certain high sugary foods, even natural sugars, that perhaps we should stay away from when it comes to overall health?
I think, again, it depends on the person. So some people would be wise to stay away from all sugars, including natural ones. But most people can handle that. There's actually people who are sensitive to fruit sugar. And so they should for sure stay away from those. Obviously, if you're having blood sugar issues, being mindful of when you're eating sugar and what you're pairing it with, even if it is a healthy sugar, right, that can still spike your blood sugars. And so it does depend on the person. The majority of healthy, you know, young, middle-aged people can handle fruit. Fruit is not bad for you, but if something is, I really love this ancient proverb. It's goes somewhere along the lines of one man's medicine is another man's poison. And so just to keep that in mind, a banana might be super nutritious for you and be really bad for me. So, yeah.
Let's talk about good fats versus bad fats as well. Because I've heard nutritionists in the past talk about some good fats when it comes to the legumes, a lot of the nuts that we take, and then bad fats, of course, you know, perhaps with some of the animal fat or the fat from burgers. What are your thoughts when it comes to good versus bad fats?
Yeah, I would definitely stay away from any like fried foods, something like chips or French fries, stuff like that should be, very much in moderation because even when I look at cells under the microscope, this is a really cool example. That outside of your cell, the circle is actually made up of essential fatty acids, and those are found in healthy good fats. So things like coconut, avocado, nuts, seeds, olives, olive oil. Even animal protein has essential fatty acids and amino acids in there, as long as I think we talked about it in a previous interview, blood typing and stuff. So as long as you can handle animal protein, then that can be a good, actually healthy source of fat if you're getting a high quality meat in there. The one that's a little dicey would be pork. Lots of people have an immune response to pork, so I wouldn't consider that a healthy fat in my practice. But other than that, animal fats should be okay for most people too.
That's good because I love the animal fat on my pork chops and my steaks, especially when I throw them on the barbecue. It's so tasty. And we're barbecue season now, Joe, so this is a good thing. Listen, I wanted to ask you about cleanses. There seems to be a lot of negatives and positives, a lot of comments when it comes to cleanses. Are cleanses the way to go? Are they effective?
Well, good thing you asked me right now because we're just entering springtime, and this transition to spring is actually the best time to do cleanse. What I would say about cleanses is it would be wise to work with someone like myself or someone else who's a nutrition professional to help kind of tailor a cleanse towards what you need. Just jumping on Google and finding some 40-day juice cleanse is probably not wise because that can have more detrimental effects than maybe positive ones. For some people, it might work out, but I think it's really wise to figure out what you need. Some people need to do a parasite cleanse. They have parasites. Some people need a heavy metal cleanse. Some people need more of like a bowel cleanse. So figuring out what you need, that would be my first thing. And then second thing would be, it doesn't always need to be so drastic because the way our bodies were designed, we actually have a detoxification system built in. So sometimes it's just about giving your body a break from excess, things we've already been talking about, unhealthy fats, unhealthy foods, and then letting your body actually do the cleansing and filling that gap with lots of vegetables, lots of water, stuff like that.
And when you say heavy metal cleanse, you're thinking more country music and pop as opposed to heavy metal?
That's a good one.
Now, Josie, if someone feels the bad food choices have been building up in their system over the years, what can they really do to make some healthier life choices?
Yeah, I mean, as we just talked about, the body's natural ability to cleanse itself is incredible, but you actually need to give it the right conditions to do so. And so I would say, again, working with someone who can help you make those decisions for your body. And it's really a lifelong learning about each of our bodies. And it can change from season to season too, what foods will build up in the system and which foods will be okay for a person. I think an easy way to do that would be to eat more vegetables. Vegetables are naturally cleansing. They're going to move stuff out of, cellular debris out of your body and bowel, backed up poops in there out of your body. So if you're trying to get rid of kind of lots of years of bad choices, then just upping your vegetable intake is a great way. Another thing, which isn't really my realm, but is really important to talk about, is exercise. And so pairing exercise with good nutrition is going to be one great way to steer your ship in the right direction.
I'm glad you actually brought that up because a lot of times we like to go for walks after a nice healthy meal. We have a nice dinner. Is there a certain period of time where we should maybe let the food settle a little bit first before we work out or go for a long walk or maybe even go for a swim? I remember our parents used to say when we were kids, wait at least a half an hour before you go swimming, after you've done eating.
I would say a gentle light walk after dinner should be okay. You're still in a calm spot. I wouldn't go for a run right after because you're operating in two different nervous system functions essentially. And one is rest and digest and one is fight or flight. And so if you're going for a leisurely walk, it actually can be good for your digestion. It can help balance your blood sugar. That would be good. In terms of the swimming and more vigorous exercise, I would definitely wait an hour or two to do that. You'll probably feel better anyway and have a better workout.
I've noticed with certain foods as well, especially when it comes to meats, that I feel very lethargic, not a lot of energy afterwards, especially when it comes to hamburger and, of course, with turkey around Thanksgiving, the tryptophan, I guess, in your system. Are there a lot of foods that are like that, very similar, that just kind of zaps your energy?
Yeah, for different reasons though. I mean, you already mentioned the tryptophan in turkey, so that's like a good, healthy, nutritious food that makes you a little sleepy. But then there's the flip side when, again, some of these intolerances can contribute to fatigue. So if you're eating things that don't jive with your body continually, then you're not going to get energy from it. Your body isn't going to break down the nutrients and use them. Your body's going to stress out about the fact that you ate it essentially and have an immune response. And so it's actually working instead of receiving nutrients. So that would be one thing to explore if you feel chronically fatigued is food sensitivities and healing the gut.
You know, I've seen a lot of advertising as well on social media about fasting. You know, fasting seems to be kind of a craze right now, very popular. What are your thoughts on fasting for our bodies?
That's a good topic. I could have a whole interview on that. But the long and the short of it is it's good for some people, particularly middle-aged men, I would say might thrive more with the intermittent fasting type thing that's going on. Women, it's not really something I would be a big fan of, just because the man has a hormone cycle of 24 hours, right? It's the same every day. It fluctuates throughout the day a little bit, but then it's the same. So they can kind of handle that. But for a woman, your hormones are different every single day of the month. And so if you fast, whether it's like a full day fast once a month or the intermittent fasting, that can affect your hormones greatly by messing with your cortisol levels. And I don't think it's super wise. Again, if it's for spiritual reasons or something like that, then that's completely different. Because like there might be some benefits to that for your spirit, but from a health standpoint, not my favorite thing for women. For men, it can be super effective, and that's kind of all I'll say on that.
Josie, people want to know more about your services and how to lead a healthier lifestyle. How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, my website is rootsandfruitswellness.com. All the info should be on there in terms of social media, phone number, email, and I'd love to meet with anyone that wants help.
Such a great name for a business. Roots and Fruits Wellness, Josie Bosgra. Thanks so much for joining us here today from Lethbridge.
Thank you.
With Canada and the U.S. still in the grips of a decades-old opioid epidemic, the crisis has deepened in recent years with the introduction of fentanyl, a synthetic opioid that is up to 100 times more potent than morphine. It is a driving force behind countless overdose deaths per year, and law enforcement agencies and officers face many challenges when it comes to controlling the synthetic. Joining me to discuss these challenges in more detail is Michael W. Brown. He is the Global Director of Counter-Narcotics Interdiction Partnerships at Rigaku Analytical Devices. He has a distinguished career spanning more than 30 years as a special agent for the Drug Enforcement Administration. Most recently, he was the DEA Headquarters Staff Coordinator for the Office of Foreign Operations for the Middle East, Europe, Afghanistan, and India. He also spent 10 years in Pakistan as a special advisor to the U.S. Embassy on various law enforcement issues. Michael, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thank you for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here.
And wow, what a distinguished career you have, Michael. So our city, Lethbridge, Alberta, is plagued with an opioid crisis, as many cities are, and it contributes to many other issues, including crime and homelessness. What kind of stats can you give us on fentanyl use and deaths associated with its use in Canada?
Well, I can tell you that the association within American cities, which are exhibiting or going through the same situations as Alberta, is staggering. I think nationally in the U.S., we're losing some 300 individuals a day related to fentanyl overdoses. That's 2,100 a week, and that's about 8,000 a month. And those numbers are anticipated to go up dramatically if something is not done to stem what I call the center of gravity of fentanyl precursor chemicals and production in Mexico. And of course, the United States and Canada are attached to the hip in many ways, economically, culturally, socially. And of course, the criminality that we share is exactly the same.
Now, many people may be wondering, if fentanyl is so deadly, why are drug dealers using it to lace illicit drugs? Like, aren't they concerned about potentially harming or killing their paying customers?
Well, here's the interesting thing about fentanyl. It's a Schedule II controlled narcotic, and it's used for severe pain medicine within cancer patients. So used appropriately, it saves many lives. But when the cartels are the manner in which they are using it, right, they're just mixing it with, lacing it with heroin, and with other narcotics, say methamphetamine or cocaine, for example. But the potency of fentanyl is extremely strong. As you mentioned earlier, it's 100 times more potent than heroin. So really, more than 2 grams is enough to kill an individual. So what the cartels are doing, they understand the pharmacology of fentanyl, the addictive quality of fentanyl. And of course, cartels are in business to make money by selling addiction. So if they can get customers to use a product that is more addictive, they can make more money. And they understand that there's a period of adjustment where traditional heroin users will transition to fentanyl. And in that period of adjustment, people will die, maybe 100,000, maybe 200,000, but they will gain another 400,000 customers. So for the cartels, it's simply the cost of doing business.
Wow, so they aren't really trying to kill people. They're looking for they're looking to expand the addiction, and I guess like those who die off. That's like you're saying, it's just the cost of doing business. That's shocking.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's murder with intent, but it's certainly a manslaughter where they know the act that they're doing will most likely cause or have a high probability of causing an individual to have an overdose reaction, therefore causing his death. So certainly they have knowledge that what they're doing could and is in many cases resulting in a homicide. But again, their primary objective is to make a profit. And historically, the cartels have never had a problem killing people with intent. So that's within their wheelhouse. I mean, these are very dangerous organizations whose only motive is to make a profit at human cost.
Now, what about prescription opioids? Because you touched on that a little bit earlier about how they do have medicinal qualities. But do you feel that they may also be contributing to the crisis?
Well, I mean, you have to go back to 2012 to 2010 when the opioid crisis really started, associated with Purdue Pharma and OxyContin, America's attempt to manage pain. Well, it got a little out of control, you could say, and then Americans became addicted to OxyContin because of overprescriptions. And I won't get into the whole Purdue Pharma litigation situation, but that was kind of the epicenter, which started what I consider to be America's non-traditional drug user epidemic, right? These are individuals that don't historically take cocaine, methamphetamine, or hard narcotics. They became addicted to prescription pills, primarily OxyContin. And once that began to get regulated, the OxyContin got cut off. But people at that point were already addicted, and then they turned to street heroin to feel that pain relief. Then they became addicted to heroin. And then over the next couple of years, fentanyl slipped into that heroin supply line and then created even a greater addiction, resulting in a high number of overdose deaths.
Now, many people feel that law enforcement officers are losing the battle against fentanyl, and I've heard that many times here in Lethbridge. What is your opinion on this?
You know, I'm often asked that question, and I would say law enforcement is not losing the battle against drug trafficking with working within the parameters that they have. Like when I work for DEA, we have a legal code. We have a justice system that allows us to do certain things. And DEA, state and local law enforcement agencies are doing everything within their authorization to combat drug trafficking. But here's the thing. Our authority, or law enforcement authority, stops at the U.S.-Mexican border. There are no large-scale laboratories in the United States. There's no cartel precursor fentanyl distribution supply chain. There's no roving gangs of cartel hitmen killing and cutting heads off of police officers. This is all occurring in Mexico, which is the center of gravity. And the U.S. does not simply have the capability to go into Mexico and manage or degrade what I call the center of gravity, which is where the problem of fentanyl distribution, the metastasization of fentanyl, of the fentanyl crisis, is now growing and spreading into America and therefore into Canada.
And what kind of work is the U.S. government doing with the Mexico government to work together on this issue?
Well, I mean, there is a bilateral relationship. There is a DEA office in Mexico, but as you know, the relationship between Mexico and the United States is probably not at its best. Starting back with the arrest of General Cienfuegos, who was the Mexican defense secretary, the Secretary of Defense for the military. He was arrested and charged on drug trafficking charges in the United States. Mexico threatened the United States to close down the embassy, kick the EA out unless he was released. So the decision was made to release him. And he was a major crime figure associated with the Sinaloa cartel. So that's the relationship the U.S. has with Mexico. It's very tenuous. And what we're seeing now in Mexico is the expansion of Mexican cartels in an attempt to basically take over the state, right? So for years of what I would call cooperative, corruptive relationship with the government has now come to an impasse, where the cartels feel that they can be in control. And this creates an even larger problem than we have in the United States.
And what about Canada? Where is Canada getting its fentanyl supply from? Is that also coming up from Mexico?
Where's the interesting thing? All the trafficking gangs that operate in the United States operate in Canada. You have the Hells Angels, Latin Kings, you have the Zetas, you have the Five Families, the Italian Mafia. And recently, there was a large shipment of fentanyl that was sent from Canada to Australia. So what the cartels are doing now, they're establishing, I believe it was a shipment was sent to Sydney, Australia. But what the cartels are doing, they're establishing Canada as a central international hub for fentanyl distribution, because it's easier to ship it from Canada to Australia as opposed from Mexico to Australia. So Canada has become this safe haven for the expansion of cartels like Sinaloa and the Jalisco New Generation in the international distribution of fentanyl. And that creates a significant problem for Canada.
Absolutely. So what does Canada need to do to nip this in the bud, really?
Well, I mean, continue to do what they're doing, and that's working with U.S. officials, working with Canadian officials, and developing, intelligence and targeting these cartels before they can establish a foothold and expand their narcotic trafficking activities. Because once that foothold gets established, it becomes very difficult to break, and that's what we're dealing with here in the United States. The cartels have well-established, entrenched drug distribution networks across the entire country. It's almost virtually impossible to ferret out all of those organizational structures to reduce the amount of fentanyl being distributed in this country.
What kinds of risks do officers face when they're exposed to fentanyl during, say, a traffic stop or a house search? Like, how do they protect themselves?
That's a very good question. I reflect back on my career with DEA. When we do a search warrant, we find, let's say, a kilogram of heroin. I would typically cut it open with a knife, take a little bit of the powder out, and put it into a reagent test kit. That process, I had heroin dust all over me, my hands, my clothes, everywhere. Today, if that was a kilo of fentanyl, I run the risk of exposure by either inhaling it or getting it into my eyes, an open cut perhaps, my nasal passages, at which point the officer is at great risk for potential overdose. In my opinion, officers now dealing with potential drug situations, search warrants, or vehicle inspections are dealing with what I call a hazmat situation. They can no longer look at it as routine, because routine and making mistakes can get you killed.
So it's not like the movies where an officer will dip his finger into like some cocaine, put it on his tongue, like, that's cocaine. That's not true, is it?
That was never a good idea to begin with, but it's certainly not. It's a worse idea now, definitely.
And how are officers able to identify a narcotic when they find a substance that looks suspicious? You touched on this a little bit earlier.
Well, it's officers have a number of tools they can use. They have the fentanyl test kits that are out there now. There are the marquee reagent test kits that test for a number of narcotics. But the problem, in my opinion, with those test measures is the officer has to expose him or herself to the actual fentanyl powder. Now, there's a lot of new technology out there referred to as Raman spectroscopy. And that's basically a handheld laser that shoots a light beam into the substance. It heats it up. The molecules get heated up and they vibrate. That vibration causes it's like a digital fingerprint. The software can then identify that substance as fentanyl, heroin, or cocaine, or a number of other narcotics, all without having to expose the officer to that substance. So I think in the future, moving forward, hopefully we'll see more law enforcement officers and departments moving towards having every officer having a Raman spectroscopy laser, handheld laser, as part of his or her toolkit.
And with that portable technology, is that enough evidence to give an officer the probable cause needed to arrest and charge a suspect?
Well, that's a great point also, because the use of technology really removes the human error aspect. So an officer is doing what we call presumptive analysis using a Raman spectroscopy. It's a computer-generated analytical response within a couple of seconds. And that can be used to apply for search warrants or further probable cause for a search or arrest, really removing the possibility of human error or the device, in the case of a fentanyl test strip, giving you a false negative reaction.
Now, the ongoing crisis can be felt hard in the city we're coming to you from, which is Lethbridge, Alberta. To address this issue, there has been support for a full-time supervised consumption site, or an SCS as we call it here. We had a provincially funded SCS from February of 2018 to August of 2020, and it was replaced then by a mobile unit later on. Some are asking for a fully equipped SCS to return, as they feel that harm reduction is vital to saving lives. What are your thoughts on this?
You know, this is a major conversation we're having in the United States. There are pros and cons. I think some of the pros are harm reduction and utilizing safe injection sites, or a quick, immediate fix to save an individual from an overdose, right? We want to save lives. But the downside of that is we're enabling long-term drug addiction by providing individuals a safe place to use narcotics. Now, anyone who understands the pharmacology of drug addiction, if you're using heroin, you have to inject or re-up at least 2 to 3 times a day.
Wow.
Fentanyl, on the other hand, will get you up in seconds and will last for 30 seconds. Typical fentanyl substance users have to re-up at least 5 to 6 times a day. Wow. So let's say you have a mobile unit, they're just going to be parked in front of somebody's house all day long, supplying narcotics that can be utilized, right? And then the additional issue with that is your cartels. They love this idea because now you're guaranteeing a lifetime supply of customers by, one, decriminalizing or legalizing personal use narcotics that's 2.5 grams or less, and the continued use and the continued rehabilitation and recidivism rate of those that you're trying to save. So I think in the very, very short term, it can save lives, but we should not stop and say we found a solution in safe site injection locations.
Well, that's all the time we have for today, Michael, but we really appreciate having you on today.
No worries. Pleasure to be here.
Michael W. Brown is the Global Director of Counter-Narcotics Interdiction at Rigaku Analytic Devices and a former special agent with the United States DEA. I'm Naveen Day. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.